have been so excited to do this all week because sex and birth go together. And I had no idea when I was writing my little fan fictions on sex. I used to be obsessed with sex and terrified of birth. And now I'm obsessed with sex and birth. Michelle here also absolutely loves sex. Like, she is the very young Sue Johansson. So Michelle, I'm going to let you take it from here. Just how did you get into this whole sex education and birth?
It's a long, long story. Actually, it's the story of my life, truly. But hi, everybody. My name's Michelle. My preferred pronouns are she and her. Thanks for joining us and for watching later, if you tune in later. I was really, really excited when Carly asked me to do this talk because no one ever asks me to talk about sex, and no one ever asks me to talk about birth. Usually it's just me blathering on to people about the importance of perineal massage and things. So it was really nice to be asked to talk about something that I'm really passionate about. One thing I will say is public speaking makes me very uncomfortable, but it's pretty funny because most of the time the things that I talk about make other people very uncomfortable. So we can all just be uncomfortable together and it's fine. You know, what this comes down to is that, like, my passion is and my profoundly feminist agenda surrounds the topic of sex and birth. And the more I learned about it, the more I realized that those two things hold hands. So let's all just take a deep breath, because, you know, things that I'm going to talk about may make you feel uncomfortable. You may feel confronted, but just know that this is a safe space, and it's okay to sit in that hot seat for the next 30 minutes or so, because you might learn something about sexuality, about your values, and about your past births or your upcoming births. So
Stephanie's watching. She says, yeah, feminist agenda. We love you.
So I became really passionate about these two very often taboo subjects, sex and birth, because my whole life I struggled with my self-worth as a woman, with my sexual identity, and I was raised Roman Catholic, which is an intense religion. It's not a jab at people that identify as religious, because I have lots of friends from Transforming Birth and other places that find it very rewarding to believe in a higher power. But for me, that was a really toxic environment as a child. And, you know, I was also surrounded by a very heteronormative family and social circle. My upbringing, you know, gender roles were really clear, and I was a very tenacious loudmouth. And as a kid, I got called bossy a lot. This was a really bad thing in my mind for a long, long time. And I spent years trying to change myself. And one of the things that I realized was that making myself small never seemed to work out for me. I was in shitty relationships. I was having shitty sex. I was making shitty money. And then an incredibly traumatic event in my life drove me to seek change. And I realized that my life is way too short to be anyone other than myself. So I found that little tenacious shithead inside of me. I dug her out. And then I realized all of a sudden people had no choice but to listen to me. And, you know, I started having good sex, and then I had great sex, and that great sex led me to a great partner. And then we got pregnant with our first child. And while I was searching for a care provider, I followed my intuition. I got told no by a few care providers, and I went, and that led me to midwifery care. And then I ended up birthing both of my babies and myself as a mother with ease and ecstasy in the comfort of my home. So long story short, I talk about sex so that my children won't have the same emotional hurdles as they discover themselves as the sexual forces that I know that they will be. And I talk about birth because it gave me the greatest gift of self-discovery, and gifts like that are meant to be shared with people. So I'm never going to shut up. So, it was in the post yesterday, we talked about, what if we talked about sex the way we talk about birth? And so some of the questions were, what do you mean you had sex at home? Weren't you afraid that something bad would happen to you if you were alone? They let you have sex on hands and knees? My attendant told me I had to have sex on my back. My partner turned the lights off so we could have some privacy while we had sex, but everyone that came in didn't knock and just flipped them back on, so we gave up. We stopped having sex for a while because we were tired. Our attendant gave my partner Viagra so we could keep going. After they gave us the drug to help us get things going, I wasn't allowed to eat anymore. I was starving. You had an orgasm during sex? I thought only hippies did that. So they sound like ridiculous. They sound ridiculous. And they are, right? Unfortunately, though, if you replace sex with birth, all of these sentiments are things that we hear. I mean, I hear them on a daily basis, almost. Hence why I'm so passionate. So how did we get here? And this is when my feminist agenda comes in, so prepare yourselves. So I think we live in this world where we have this dichotomy of like the mother and the whore. And it's very visceral. It makes people feel like, oh, right? But the reality is that, the female sex has been universally sexualized to the point of confusion. What physical traits and behaviors are normal and which physical traits magically label us as dirty, depraved, or downright unmotherly. It's really important to dissolve the confusion between sexuality and sexualization, I think, because that impacts all of this quite deeply. So sexuality describes sexual identity, attraction, experiences, and this may or may not align with, your sex, your gender, or your parental status. Sexualization happens when a person's value is limited to their sexual appeal or behavior at the exclusion of all of the other characteristics in their lives. So in other words, all of those parts that make us a whole person, such as our intelligence, abilities, bodily functions, because women don't poop, right? Values, interests, passions, or our desire to have a family. These characteristics that paint the picture of the whole person are just absent from this sexualized message and all of those images that we receive on pretty much a constant basis now that we're all on the internet. These messages are deeply patriarchal, constraining, and they create a very big disconnect for the female sex in particular. So what does this narrative look like? Well, in childhood, we don't see our own parents interact in a sexual manner. Some of us don't see our parents interact at all. We are indoctrinated with the idea that nudity is bad and that our naked bodies are something to be ashamed of. We are handed names like kitty, pee-pee, tatas for our genitalia, and we're told that our genitalia are private parts. And then in our maidenhood, things get even more muddled and confusing. When our menstruation is perceived as grotesque and as something to hide, even though it converges with a highly regarded attribute of the female sex, and that is the ability to bear children one day. Breasts are an object of visual pleasure for those around us as we butt into women, but we are automatically expected to switch gears and feed our babies from them in the future, but not in public. That would be an open challenge to their objectification. And, don't have sex before marriage. Oh, but orgasms are really sexy. So definitely have those every time you have sex, but don't masturbate to learn how to achieve orgasm because that's really skanky. And my least favorite of all, sometimes intercourse hurts. You can handle it, but you won't be able to handle birth because you obviously have a low pain tolerance. I get really angry when I hear that one. And we do hear that a lot when we interview with families as doulas. Steph and I hear that most women in conversation will say, like, I don't think I can do it. I think I have a really low pain tolerance. Bullshit. So you can see the mess that we're wading through by the time we reach our childbearing years. By then, we are disconnected, we're confused, and we're downright ashamed of our bodies and our inherent sexuality, right? Because that makes us a whore. So here's what it comes down to. I'm going to tell you the truth. And the truth is that sex and birth are not so different. And we see that in science. So one of the things that we know is that our brainwaves behave the same way in those acts. So in birth, as we move from early labor to active labor, our brainwaves shift from beta brain, which is like our thinking day-to-day brain, so what we're in right now, to alpha brainwaves and theta brainwaves. So these brainwaves are the same ones that we use when we're sleeping, when we're dreaming, and yes, when we're having sex and when we're having orgasms in particular. We often see parallels in that sort of out-of-body experience descriptor that people use when they talk about like the best sex of their life, right? Or having a baby, right? I left my body. I floated above myself. We hear that a lot. And, you know, the other thing is that we know that our hormones, yeah, right? You're just gone. Goodbye. I had a mom look at me once. She was moving from early to active. It was her second baby. And she looked at me and she went, see you later. Which is awesome. Our hormones behave the same way too. So most of us know that oxytocin is one of the key players of birth, but it's also really important in all of the sort of intimate moments of our lives. So it spikes when we do something as simple as cuddle with our partner, but it's released in massive doses during orgasm. Oxytocin is also the MVP of birth. When uninterrupted, we see women promote oxytocin intuitively by keeping the lights low in their space, removing their clothing, kissing their partner, seeking that closeness with their partner. And sometimes we even see women intuitively and in an uninhibited way stimulate their own nipples and even their own clitoris. And this isn't something that we tell women to do. They just do it. The byproduct of healthy levels of oxytocin in birth keeps things chugging steadily along. So lots of oxytocin often equals a shorter labor experience. And like from a person who loves birth and loved giving birth, I would also take a shorter labor experience over a longer labor experience. So, you know, we need that oxytocin. So another hormone that comes into play are endorphins. So these guys are key in both sex and birth. So have you ever had a headache or bad menstrual cramps, or you're laying in bed staring at the ceiling and you can't fall asleep and tried masturbation for pain relief? If not, you should give it a try, because one of the things that we know is that endorphins are our own body's natural pain relief tool. It actually mimics opioids. So it's like our own morphine, kind of. And it is the ultimate relaxation tool and sleep aid. So when this is released in orgasm, it can really just decimate discomfort in our bodies and help us relax and go to sleep. In physiological labor and birth, endorphin levels rise steadily throughout the experience, provided that we are free of, you know, medicinal pain relief. Then we see those endorphins spike. And what this does is it allows birthers to manage and meet each sensation that they have with that same sense of calm and euphoria, right? And so this also, you know, when you feel calm and you're relaxed, this allows you to slip more easily into that alpha theta brain, and it's kind of like slipping into a pool of water. And then you kind of leave the pain still there. Like, I'm never going to be like, I mean, some people would say that birth isn't painful, but I'm never going to tell everyone that birth is like universally not painful. But I do find that the endorphins tend to leave that pain to like live in the background a little bit. Like it's there, it's just kind of back there. And then lastly, we're going to talk about prostaglandins. And one of the things we know is that prostaglandins are sort of one of those things that our body makes on its own when it's ready to go into labor, but sperm has prostaglandins in it. It's got spunk. And so what it does is when a man or a person with male sex organs ejaculates onto the cervix, what we know is that up to 3 ejaculations has the same effect as 1 round of Cervidil, which is a medical form of induction. So if you're at the tail end of your pregnancy and your waters are intact and you're ready to give your baby their eviction notice, intercourse is a fantastic and fun way to give your baby the boot because, usually, if you're feeling really good and an orgasm happens, that's also going to create that oxytocin. So that's a good thing. This is the one that makes people really uncomfortable. So walking the line between pain and pleasure it's a thin line. It's like walking a tightrope. So one of the things that we know is that we understand the clitoris better now than we have ever before. Up until very recently, we thought that the clitoris was like this little bean that lived under the clitoral hood. And it was just it. It was like a little pea, right? And then a urologist actually discovered that it's not just a little pea. It covers a vast territory under the surface of our vulva. And our amazing clitorises have these beautiful wings that run along the sides of our labia and these 2 bulbs that sit right on either side of our vaginal opening. Truly the clitoris kind of looks like a micropenis. It is. It's like our own version. So when you think about that, when you think about the amount of pressure and stimulation that we experience when on that clitoris, on those bulbs, as we push our babies out, as they emerge through that vaginal opening, it makes perfect sense to me that the sensations that might come with that make this tightrope walk of pain and pleasure even more precarious, right? Because there's a lot of sensory receptors there. So if we're in the right headspace, we could perceive that as pleasure. It's possible. In French, the word for orgasm reflects this sentiment really beautifully, in my opinion. They call the orgasm la petite mort, which means the little death. I invite you all to think back to a sexual experience that you found really, really intense. And when that sexual energy grew, did you feel overwhelmed? Did you maybe have to take a break and do some deep breaths? And when you did climax, what happened? Did it take your breath away? Did you leave your body? The parallels between that heightened state of orgasm and the peak of a birth experience is really, truly undeniable when you frame it that way. And then we can talk about sexual kinks. So they demonstrate this beautifully as well. Have you ever gotten a really good spanking or given one and it made you more aroused? We know that there are some people on this earth that find their most fulfilling sexual lives walking this line in the form of practicing kink. And, I think it's really important to point out that some people actually, that pleasure doesn't come from any sort of genital stimulation at all. And that the human mind and body are obviously incredibly complex. And in the end, I think we do ourselves a disservice when we boil it all down to erogenous zones and intercourse. And, I tell this to all my clients. Sex and intercourse don't always go together, right? Intercourse isn't sex. Sex isn't intercourse. I think sex is orgasms. So however you get there, that's sex. This whole first base, second base, third base, throw it in the garbage. Doesn't exist anymore. It's trash. So what does that mean for us as birthing people? Most of us know that birth started in the home. When we look back at literature, midwives were the end all be all. They came to your house. They often you know, saw your sisters give birth, your mother, your aunts, like your entire community, right? They were your community midwives. And then, you know, we mechanized birth, and birth got driven into hospitals, and midwifery kind of fell into the background. And it still existed, but it became like this witchy thing that people do, right? And that connotation really shifted. And so that sort of patriarchal mindset really changed things for us. So one of the things that we know is that when we did move birth into hospitals, we actually saw maternal fetal outcomes get worse because people weren't washing their hands. And so we, you know, we think that when we moved birth into hospitals, we started saving all these babies. That's actually not what happened at all. When we mechanized birth and started, you know, doing all this, like checking for dilation, and, you know, we categorize things into early and active, and you're supposed to dilate, you know, once you're in an active pattern, you're supposed to dilate a certain amount of centimeters an hour. When we did that, what we ended up doing was setting standards that are impossible to live up to, truly. And so I think it's really hard too, because hospitals are a tool. Sometimes we do need them. And there are people that are probably going to watch this that are like, yeah, I needed the hospital. And that's totally fair. But what we did do is we put our births into the hands of cisgendered men who weren't comfortable with the animalistic and sexual nature of birth. And so they limited it. And in the ways that they could, they limited it environmentally, and they limited it emotionally. So, you know, they saw women making sounds that sounded like sex, and that made them uncomfortable. So they medicated us, right?
Been uncomfortable with us having orgasms.
Oh God, right?
They probably can't do it properly.
Truly, you know, and so one of the things that we have sort of done in the long run is we've sort of pigeonholed sex to the bedroom, and we've taken the sex out of birth. But for most people, I mean, we know how this baby happened. Like, you're not fooling anybody. I know not everybody has the same journey to getting pregnant. And for some people, you know, it is a little bit of a different path, but that energy is, you know, they say the same energy that got the baby in there is going to get the baby out. And we have seen great strides in past years with people like Michelle O'Donnell and Ina May Gaskin and Wapio that have really driven home that this is all very normal. But I think we have a long way to go, because what the issue is that the lack of privacy in hospital settings drives women to feel inhibited when they move through their birth. And when you learn about things like Ina May's sphincter law, you know, our cervixes don't like feeling inhibited, and they go like this. So one of the things that we tell our clients, you know, if you do have to be in a hospital for whatever reason, stay home as long as possible, right? Stay in your own environment, keep the lights low, and get comfortable being sexual in your birth experience. One of the things that my doula taught me was start sleeping naked with your partner. And that was really simple, because at the time we were having a rough time. I didn't feel very sexual at the time. And I expressed that to her, and she was like, well, you know what? Maybe let's not make sex the end all be all. Maybe you guys schedule one night a week where you have naked time. And I was like, naked time? Tell me about this naked time. And she basically said, like, just put the kids to bed, don't turn on the TV, climb in naked, and just talk to each other about your day. Have a snuggle. Most of the time when we did this, sex happened. It's a very natural thing to kind of move through those motions. So it got us more comfortable with having sex in pregnancy. And when you're comfortable having sex in pregnancy and you feel very sexual in pregnancy, often you kind of give yourself permission to feel sexual in birth. Don't invite people that you wouldn't fuck in front of. Don't invite people that you would not fuck in front of. It's really important. And we say this to people when we interview because it's really important. We're going to see a human exit your body, and birth is meant to be sexual. So you got to be comfortable with that person that you choose to be in your space, or those people that you choose to be in your space. Right? And if that means no one is there, so be it. So be it. Right? You can do it. And, you know, if you have the ability to birth at home, do it. Birth at home. I can speak to it. And the picture that is painted is just so different. And it's why I do this work. Because when I had my home births, I wanted to shout it from the rooftops. And what I was met with was everyone else's stories that were kind of the antithesis of mine. I felt free. I felt uninhibited. I felt in touch with my partner. I felt safe. I felt private. And my first baby was born in 8 hours, which is pretty good for a first birth, with no vaginal tears, and great APGAR scores, no recess needed. And my second birth to a 10-pound baby was at home. And my whole birth video, I think, is about 1 hour and 40 minutes. I kind of do not recommend. It was a little crazy. I barfed, I pooped, things happened. But but I felt so safe. And my baby obviously felt very safe. And so I just had a baby. And it is possible. We can do it. And birth can be awesome, right? We just have to find that path for ourselves, whatever that looks like. And I have seen hospital births that look like that too. So, yeah, that's about it.
Oh, I love it. And 10 pounds.
Yep. Vaginas don't have a scale, people. They don't. Everyone's like, oh my gosh, 10 pounds. And I'm like, yeah, I didn't know I was pushing out a 10-pound baby.
Yeah.
I made them weigh her twice because I thought that they were lying to me.
And but I'm not going to complain about my 7 pounds, 13 ounces anymore.
I mean, I have heard, like, you know, that pushing out smaller babies is actually a little more challenging.
I've heard that too. Actually,
yeah.
My mom told me that when everybody was worrying about big babies, she said that the big baby's fat squishes and there's more gravity.
Fat squishes. I mean,
fat squishes.
I can speak to squishy fat.
Yes. Squishy 10-pound baby.
Yeah. I mean, she's still squishy. She's 3. I mean, I have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old, and the 3-year-old weighs 4 pounds less than my 6-year-old. So she was destined for greatness, that one. Destined for greatness.
I love it. We have destined for greatness daughters that just do not stop ever. Yeah. Except I got my boy first, and our kids are about the same age apart, aren't they?
Yep.
Like 3 years. I
needed one out of diapers before I could even entertain it. I needed it.
I tried. Hunter was not biting potty training.
I was a nanny. I nannied 1 boy and 2 girls, and they were like 3 months apart, all 3 kids, from 3 separate families. And both the girls who were born after potty trained first, and the boy was the last one.
That is unfair. That is unfair. You actually got potty training. I mean, my kids, oh my goodness, it's been an adventure. You know how they say that girls potty train faster than boys? It is not true in all cases.
Really? You're not finding that? Because I found that.
Hunter, 3.5. Michaela, 4.
She's tenacious.
Oh, she is. Well, you know she's tenacious. You've seen her climbing on me during our luminaries things. She takes no crap, that one.
No. But she's very easy.
You should see the video of her. She's like, I can have a baby at home wherever I want.
I know. I saw that one. Oh my gosh, so cute. I love it. And I think that's one of the gifts that we also give people and our children when we birth at home. A lot of people are afraid that they're going to traumatize their kids when they birth at home with previous children in the space. And I actually find that it's completely the opposite. I think that one of the things that we have to always remember is that these hangups that we have about birth, that's not inherent. That's created over time. And that fear is created over time. And so what a gift to give to your children, to show them that you're capable. Right?
Yeah. No,
that women can grow. And I bet you he was just fine.
Yeah.
Right?
And then he went to bed, and then Michaela came out late at night, and then my doula came into the bedroom to bring him out because he woke up for a few seconds, and she's like, "There's your baby sister." And he's like, "I'm tired," and he went back to bed.
Yep. Yeah. That was like,
yeah, okay.
Yeah. Elliot was home when I birthed Dylan, and she slept through the whole thing, and she was just on the other side of the wall. Yeah. And my husband always jokes that I sound like a moose when I give birth, so I wasn't quiet. She slept through the whole thing, and then we actually woke her up to come into the bed and meet her sister. And she met her, and she was happy to meet her. And then she was like, "I'm done. I'm gonna go back to bed now."
I was vocal in both my births, but apparently I was louder in the hospital. And like he was very surprised. He's like, "Hun, you weren't as loud as at home as you were in the hospital." I'm thinking, well, it's because I didn't have to drown out everybody else.
True. Also, hospitals have like the space is quite barren, right? So I think that we get like a reverb in hospitals. Also, everyone is more alert in hospital settings, including partners, right? Like we're dealing with bright lights, people walking in and out of the space, not shutting the door, which is my biggest vendetta. Because they just apparently don't know how to shut doors. Everybody in hospitals was born in a barn, apparently. That's my mother's thing. But yeah, I think that it just kind of makes us a little bit more hyper alert, which again, kind of ties back into our previous conversation topic of getting into that headspace. I bet you guys were just all in better brainwave patterns.
Oh yeah. Yeah. With, my first, of course, I was in the hospital and I'm like, I need a room with a tub. And the intention was to have the lights off, stay in the bathroom the whole time so nobody could touch me or get at me. And then still having that noise around me, I'm like, fine, give me the gas. So I took the gas, but that was just to get me to my happy place. Yeah. At home, I got to my happy place and I felt like I was on the gas at home. And I'm like, I wonder if I can replicate that next time.
You were on your own gas.
I was on my own gas. It was like, hey, this is great.
Yes. Yeah.
But I experimented with sphincter law. I actually clenched my jaw during like a contraction just to see. It's like, okay, I'm going to tense up deliberately. And I'm like, okay, I hate that. I'm never doing that again. And then the next time I'm like, just let it go. And I'm like, oh, okay. Now it's just a little bit of pressure. And the only part that I was like, oh my God, I don't want to do this anymore was transition, or what I thought was transition. It was really her head coming down. Yeah. And like, it was just bulging waters. So the bed was just bulging and all of a sudden it just burst. And I'm like, well, there goes my water, or my call birth that I wanted.
I know. I had a dream. I had a dream with one of the kids that I don't remember which one, but I had a dream. I think it might have been Elliot because she's the one who gave me the wild pregnancy dreams. But I had a dream that I gave birth to her in the call. And then when I broke the amniotic sac, she was a giant clear gummy bear.
I gave birth to a kitten, but not a gummy bear.
Clear gummy bear. Yeah, it was very strange. I had really, really wild pregnancy dreams.
Were you hungry, Michelle?
Yeah, apparently. I mean, I think, even my second birth, which was really, really intense, I remember it was happening so quickly that I knew I needed to get into that headspace. And so Jesse was asking me questions about like where things are supposed to go. He could tell that I was having this baby like soon. And so he was like, where's this? And where's that? And I looked at him and I said, You're harshing my vibe, man.
Right? Oh man, Tyler, I don't know if I can do this when her head was like crowning because the midwife wasn't there yet. And my doula had gone home because she was in Chilliwack and then she had to drive all the way back.
Oh my gosh.
And yeah, so because things weren't picking up in any real pattern. So she's like, so I'm going to go home. I'm going to let you rest. And then I'll probably be back tomorrow.
Interesting.
And I'm like, okay.
So everybody left?
Everybody left. And that's when things picked up. Tyler even had to leave. Like at some point, he's like 10 o'clock at night. He's like, okay, is it okay if I go to the store? And I'm like, yeah, go. Like, get out of here. Like, basically, he was just like in my vibe, really. All I needed was for the pool to stay warm. I sent him and Hunter to swimming lessons, and I had my doula come just to keep the pool warm.
Yeah.
But mostly I just wanted to be left alone. And it
was
introverted.
I know.
So it made sense in the long run, but I think that's why my labor stalled the night before was because the midwife was there and the doula was there and they were trying to get me to do all the spinning babies. And I'm thinking, I just want to be left alone and go to sleep. And Michaela's like, got it, Mom. You don't want me to come tonight.
Oh my gosh. It's so funny. Sometimes I open my mouth and my mother just climbs right out. And all I can think in my head is this saying she taught me how to cook. I really love to cook. And I used to stand in the kitchen waiting for things to boil. And she would say, Michelle, a watched pot never boils.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. I don't do well being watched.
No, I don't think anybody does, truly. And so, you know,
lights have to be out.
Oh, well, I mean, at least dim. Yeah. Like, I mean, it goes back to those questions, right? Like some of those things sound so ludicrous. Like the idea that people are just going to be walking in and out of your space and flipping the lights on without asking permission while you're, you know, making love. That sounds really.
Or right after orgasm.
Yeah. Like really.
Don't harsh my buzz, man.
Right? You're like living in the glow, right? And like, so just leave it. And I think that is something that we really when we start getting comfortable with birth being sexual, then all of these things really start to make sense to us. And we make those connections. And when we make those connections, we are more easily able to move through these parts of our labor and set the scene and set ourselves up for a really positive experience, knowing that, right? Yeah. No hands, no hands. Get out of there. Right? Or, you know, maybe just your hands. Okay. What if you wanted to check? You have the power to check your own cervix if you want to. It's your cervix. Not theirs. It's not their cervix.
Well, I did actually notice, like, that's how I knew that it was her head. Is like, I'm like, okay, my water just broke. What's going on? And all of a sudden it's like, oh, there's her head. And my husband's like, oh my God, her head's right there. And I'm like, I know. Yes, dear, you call the midwife now. And the doula, it's like, yes, dear. Well, they're telling me I need to call an ambulance. Is there an emergency? I'm like, no, it's just backup. We've been through this. It's like, I was like, I don't know if I can deliver a baby. He's like, I'm in the water. I can do it.
Oh my gosh. Isn't that so funny?
He didn't even see her born. He's like, well, I saw her head, so that counts.
Oh, how magical, though.
Oh, it was amazing. I wish I had pictures. I wish I had pictures of that, though. Like, that's the only thing that really sucks about sending my doula away is that I don't have those pictures of me holding her in the water and being like, I did it.
Right?
I did it. I had a baby at home by myself.
And isn't it funny? Like we all, like our bodies are designed to forget, you know, we do hear that like pretty much across the board is that women, we say, write your birth story down because you're going to forget it. Right. And for some people that is a small blessing, right? That they can let that sort of fade into the background if they have a negative experience. But for those of us that have really positive experience, we clutch with our, like, you can't pry that experience from our dead hands.
They're not taking that away from me.
And you want to remember, and it starts to fade and you try to hang on to it. Right. And I think that's really beautiful. I think, that's how you know that it was that it was a really positive experience for you when you're really hanging on to the threads of those memories that are starting to fade away. I think that's really, really cool. Yeah, we watch Dylan's birth video every year on her birthday.
Oh, so envious that you got a birth video.
Yeah, well, I mean, we learned our lesson because the first time around, Jesse, we had a tripod set up in the camera, and he hit play, he hit record, and then we went to watch it afterwards, and he forgot to put a video card in the camera.
Oh no!
So we got like maybe 10 seconds of my birth before it cut out.
I'm feeling we would end up forgetting, and that exact same thing would probably happen.
Right? Yeah.
Which would suck. Yeah. But I mean, if I have another one, I would totally rock it.
Of course you would.
Hell yeah. I'll bring you over just to warm up the pool.
Right?
Keep the pool warm. Easiest job ever.
I think, that's, we talked a while ago. I think it was, we were in our WAPIO training, Steph and I, and there was another doula, and I think she's the one who referenced it. She was like, I don't know why we're called doulas, because really what we should be called is beelas, because we don't really do a whole lot of things. We just be, which I think is really cool. Right?
However we need it.
Yeah. And women can do the damn thing. And I think that's for most women, all they really need is a witness. Right?
I just need somebody to keep it warm.
Oh no. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you very much for having me on. It was really fun.
Oh, you know how much I adore you, Michelle. And I can't wait to see you tomorrow you're coming to Luminaries tomorrow, right?
Yes.
Yay! Yes. So we can talk in our group too. So right. I adore you so much, and I know you have to go because I know you have a client. So go be with your client, and I will see you tomorrow. And hopefully we can bring you back into the group again.
Yes.
Maybe for postpartum. Because chance of postpartum sex, that one's a big one.
Oh, mama. Is it ever? Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to come back and talk about having sex after you've had a baby. That's really intense.
Yes, it is. And it's not talked about quite often, or it's talked over very, very loosely.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, talk soon.
Talk soon. Bye. Oh, I love Michelle. I love her energy. I hope you enjoyed that. So we will be bringing her in the group for postpartum. So if that's something you're interested in, definitely drop in the comments and say, yes, I want a postpartum month, and I will see what I can get into the schedule. This month, of course, is all about pain and getting over the thought of pain in childbirth and shifting your mindset. So I hope that today you got a pretty good idea that birth is not always painful. Sometimes it is invigorating, and sometimes you can even have orgasms, and that sex and birth tie so well into each other. And I hope you enjoyed the diagram of the clitoris. See, it's not just a little bean. That's not something that you usually get in the textbooks, is it? That's because it was only discovered about a few years ago. I didn't even know that. And I was way into sex before I was into birth. Like, I was reading all the Cosmo and the human sexuality, and it's just, I'm just so fascinated by what our bodies can do and what we're capable of. And I know that there's going to be so much more to be discovered. So now I must leave you until next week. And I just want to thank you for tuning in today. If you have any questions, of course, you can just leave a message in the comments, or if you want to keep it a little bit more personal, like you don't want the whole group to see it, you can also just send me a message, and I will get back to you, or either right away or as soon as I'm done feeding a kid or putting them to bed. And I have some surprises in the next week for you as well. I'm going to be talking about sphincter law. So that's going, Michelle talked a little bit about that already. So we're going to dive deeper into sphincter law, and I hope to see you next week. Okay, bye.